Hello, welcome back. Thank you all so much for joining me with the studies of A Course in Miracles Workbook for Students from the original edition here on March the 12th of 2023, Lesson 71. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. You may not realize that the ego has set up a plan for salvation in opposition to God's. It is this plan in which you believe, since it is the opposite of God's. You also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego is to be damned. This sounds preposterous, of course. Yet after we have considered just what the ego's plan is, perhaps you will realize that however preposterous it may be, you do believe it. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external circumstance or event were changed, you would be saved. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration of an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. Or maybe you could think of it this way, if this were different, I would be happy. The change of mind that is necessary for salvation is thus demanded of everyone and everything except yourself. The role assigned to your own mind in this plan, then, is simply to determine what other than itself must change if you are to be saved. According to this insane plan, any perceived source of salvation is acceptable, provided it will not work. This ensures that the fruitless search will continue, for the illusion persists that although this hope has always failed, there are still grounds for hope in other places and in other things. Another person will yet serve better. Another situation will yet offer success. Always that external searching. Such is the ego's plan for your salvation. Surely you can see how it is in strict accord with the ego's basic doctrine. Seek, but do not find. Seek, but do not find, the ego's basic doctrine. For what could more surely guarantee that you will not find salvation than to channelize all your efforts in searching for it where it is not? God's plan for salvation works simply because by following His direction, you seek for salvation where it is. But if you are to succeed, as God promises you will, you must be willing to seek there only. Otherwise, your purpose is divided, and you will attempt to follow two plans for salvation, which are diametrically opposed in all ways. The result can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. How can you escape all this? Very simply. The idea for today is the answer. Only God's plan for salvation will work. There can be no real conflict about this because there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will save you. His is the only plan that is certain in its outcome. His is the only plan that must succeed. Let us practice recognizing this certainty today, and let us rejoice that there is an answer to what seems to be a conflict with no resolution possible. All things are possible to God. Salvation must be yours because of His plan, which cannot fail. Begin the two longer practice periods for today by thinking about today's idea, only God's plan for salvation will work, and realizing that it contains two parts, each making equal contribution to the whole. God's plan for your salvation will work, and the second part, other plans will not. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at the second part. It is inerrant in the first. And in the first part is your full release from all your insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. They have led to depression and anger, but God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Remembering this, let us devote the remainder of the extended practice periods to asking God to reveal His plan to us. Ask Him very specifically to reveal your plan to us, God. Ask Him very specifically after you spend a little time thinking about the two parts, that only God's plan will work, and other things, and you might think in those, other things won't work. And you might, in your first part of your quiet time, think about those things that you thought were going to bring you happiness, or that you still think are going to bring you happiness. Let them come if God wants them to come, is my attitude. And don't think that that's where salvation comes from. Salvation comes from within yourself, your connection with God. Remember, okay, God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Remembering this, let us devote the remainder of the extended practice periods to asking God to reveal His plan to us. Ask Him very specifically, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Give Him full charge of the rest of the practice period, and let Him tell you what needs to be done by you in His plan for salvation. He will answer you in proportion to your willingness to hear His voice. He will answer you in proportion to your willingness to hear His voice. Refuse not to hear. The very fact that you're doing the exercises proves that you have some willingness to listen. This is enough to establish your claim to God's answer. In the shorter practice periods, tell yourself often that God's plan for salvation and only His plan will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today, and respond to them with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work. Try to remember the idea for today some 6 or 7 times an hour. Wow, He wants us to really think about this often today. 6 or 7 times an hour. Try to tell yourself, only God's plan for salvation will work. There could be no better way to spend a half a minute or less than to remember the source of your salvation and to see it where it is. So in the shorter practice periods, tell yourself often, 6 or 7 times today, God's plan for salvation and only His will work. And then be alert for temptation to hold a grievance. And if that one comes up, well then dismiss it by saying, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. And only His plan will work. And return to your happiness. Okay, we're going to learn a little bit about staying in that eternal state of joy in our lesson today. Let's go look at it. And we're ready to start. We're in chapter 8, The Journey Back, section Roman numeral 5, The Light of the World. And it starts off, if God's will for you is complete peace and joy, unless you experience only this, you must be refusing to acknowledge His will. Wow. Are you experiencing peace and joy always? Only God's plan for salvation will work. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation. But only God's plan will work. Okay, well, we'll go back. We'll read that here in just a moment. Let's take a look at, in this mescaline mix that I got from Lake Valley Seed the other day, I was looking at the cultivars that are on it, and it says that that It includes tango. There's different mixes of mescaline. Mescaline mix, a mix of different, usually cut them as young greens, but you can do them any way. But here's the ones that it had in its list. Tango, Lala Rosa, Black-Seeded Simpson, Deer Tongue Red, Royal Oak Leaf, Arugula, Frizzy, and Mizuna. I had never heard of Mizuna, and I found one from Heirloom Seeds, rareseeds.com, which is really Baker's Creek Seeds. And it's Mizuna 605 Summer. That's its cultivar. It's a Brassica niposenica. Mizuna variety was originally bred to withstand the heat and intense humidity of Japan's interior. Summer Mizuna is incredibly bolt resistant, even in the face of punishing heat and moisture. Mizuna is suitable for several harvests and can be eaten at all stages. This variety is traditionally sown for high summer harvest, when the juicy, watery stems make the most refreshing midday snack. It needs 6 to 12 hours of sunlight, sprouts in 5 to 8 days. Ideal temperature is 55 to 70, so it's kind of a cool weather plant. Seed depth, 1/4 inch. Plant spacing, 6 to 12 inches. It is frost hardy. It's tolerant of heat and frost, but best planted in cool spring or fall conditions. They're suggesting to sow it in place, prefers rich soil, harvest individual leaves, or cut entire plant. And that's your Mizuna. 605 Summer is that variety, but Mizuna. Okay, let's go take a look at the light of the world. If God's will for you is complete peace and joy, unless you experience only this, you must be refusing to acknowledge His will. His will does not vacillate, being changeless forever. When you are not at peace, it can only be because you do not believe you are in Him. Yet He is all in all. His peace is complete, and you must be included in it. His laws govern you because they govern everything. You cannot exempt yourself from His laws, although you can disobey them. Yet if you do, and only if you do, you will feel lonely and helpless because you are denying yourself everything. Next paragraph, 26. I am come as a light into the world that does deny itself everything. I am come as a light into a world that does deny itself everything. It does this simply by dissociating itself from everything. It is therefore an illusion of isolation, maintained by fear of the same loneliness which is its illusion. I have told you that I am with you always, even to the end of the world. And that's Jesus speaking, quoting out of Matthew 28:20. And then he's going to say something, the next line out of John 8:12. That is why I am the light of the world. If I am with you in the loneliness of the world, the loneliness is gone. If I'm with you in the loneliness of the world, then the loneliness is gone. If you can sense His presence inside. You cannot maintain the illusion of loneliness if you are not alone. My purpose then is to overcome the world. I do not attack it, but my light must dispel it because of what it is. 27. Light does not attack darkness, but it does shine it away. If my light goes with you everywhere, you shine it away with me. The light becomes ours, and you cannot abide in darkness any more than darkness can abide wherever you go. The remembrance of me is the remembrance of yourself and of me who sent me to you. Oh, and of Him who sent me to you. The remembrance of me is the remembrance of yourself and of Him who sent me to you. You were in darkness until God's will was done completely by any part of the sonship. When this was done, it was perfectly accomplished by all. How else could it be perfectly accomplished? My mission was simply to unite the will of the sonship with the will of the Father by being aware of the Father's will myself. This is the awareness I came to give. And your problem in accepting it is the problem of this world. Dispelling it is salvation. And in this sense, I am the salvation of the world. Let's read that again. My mission was simply to unite the will of the sonship with the will of the Father by being aware of the Father's will myself. That the Father's will is that they are united. This is the awareness I came to give. And your problem in accepting it is the problem of the world, that we're already united and we just need to accept it, that it's here now. Dispelling it is salvation. And in this sense, I am the salvation of the world. The world, 28, the world must despise and reject me because the world is the belief that love is impossible. The world must despise and reject me because the world is the belief that love is impossible. Your reaction to me, or your reactions to me, are the reactions of the world to God. If you will accept the fact that I am with you, you are denying the world and accepting God. And you won't be lonely either. If you will accept the fact that I am with you, you are denying the world and accepting God. My will is His, and your will to hear me is the decision to hear His voice and abide in His will. As God sent me to you, so will I send you to others, and I will go to them with you so we can teach them union and peace. Now we're going to teach them union and peace. Teach them yoga. Union and peace. 29. Do you not think the world needs peace as much as you do? Do you not think the world needs peace as much as you do? Do you not want to give it to the world as much as you want to receive it? Unless you do, you will not receive it. Well, we want to be able to, we want to desire to give our peace and union to everyone as much as we want to receive it. It will have to, if you will to have it of me, you must give it. If you will to have it of me, you must give it. Rehabilitation does not come from anyone else. You can have guidance from without, but you must accept it from within. The guidance must become what you want, or it will be meaningless to you. That is why rehabilitation is a collaborative venture. We're going to do it together. 30. I can tell you what to do, but this will not help you unless you collaborate by believing that I know what to do. Only then will your mind choose to follow me. Without your will, you cannot be rehabilitated. Motivation to be healed is the crucial factor in rehabilitation. Your willingness. And we learned about that in our lesson today. To the degree that we're willing is the degree we'll hear God's voice. Well, motivation to be healed is the crucial factor in rehabilitation. Without this, you're deciding against healing, and your veto of my will for you makes healing impossible. If healing is our joint will, unless our wills are joined, you cannot be healed. This is obvious when you consider what healing is for. Healing is the way in which the separation is overcome. Separation is overcome by union. It cannot be overcome by separating. 31. The will to unite must be unequivocal, or the will itself is divided or not whole. Your will is the means by which you determine your own condition, because will is the mechanism of decision. Your will is the means by which you determine your own condition, because will is the mechanism of decision. That's why yesterday my salvation comes only from me, because it's your decision. You're not forced. It is the power by which you separate or join and experience pain or joy accordingly. My will cannot overcome yours, because yours is as powerful as mine. If it were not so, the sons of God would be unequal. All things are possible through our joint will, but my will alone cannot help you. Your will is as free as mine, and God himself would not go against it. I cannot will what God does not will. I can offer you my will to make yours invincible by this sharing, but I cannot oppose yours without competing with it and thereby violating God's will for you. 32. Nothing God created can oppose your will, as nothing God created can oppose his. God gave your will its power, which I can only acknowledge in honor of his. If you want to be like me, I will help you, knowing that we are alike. If you want to be different, I will wait until you change your mind. I love that. If you want to be different, I will wait until you change your mind. I can teach you, but only you can choose to listen to my teaching. How else can it be if God's kingdom is freedom? Freedom cannot be learned by tyranny of any kind, and the perfect equality of all God's sons cannot be recognized through the dominion of one will over another. God's sons are equal in will, all being the will of their Father. This is the only lesson I came to teach, knowing that it is true. 33. When your will is not mine, it is not our Father's. This means that you have imprisoned yours and have not let it be free. Of yourselves you can do nothing, because of yourselves you are nothing. I am nothing without the Father, and you are nothing without me, because by denying the Father you deny yourself. I will always remember you, and in my remembrance of you lies your remembrance of yourself. In our remembrance of each other lies our remembrance of God, and in this remembrance lies your freedom, because your freedom is in him. Join then with me in praise of him, and you whom he created. This is our gift of gratitude to him, which he will share with all his creations, to whom he gives equally whatever is acceptable to him. Because it is acceptable to him, it is the gift of freedom, which is his will for all his sons. By offering freedom, you will be free. By offering freedom, you will be free. 34. Freedom is the only gift you can offer to God's sons, being an acknowledgement of what they are and what he is. Freedom is creation, because it is love. What you seek to imprison, you do not love. Therefore, when you seek to imprison anyone, including yourself, you do not love him, and you cannot identify with him. When you imprison yourself, you're losing sight of your true identification with me and with the Father. Your identification is with the Father and with the Son. It cannot be with one and not the other. If you are part of one, you must be part of the other, because they are one. And I think we'll stop there for today. We'll pick up there tomorrow in the middle. All right, well, let's take a look briefly at what we're going to do in our lesson again today. Lesson 71. Begin the longer practice period for today by thinking about today's idea and realizing it contains two parts. God's plan for salvation will work as the first part, and only his plan will work as the second part. God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Remember this, and let us devote the remainder of the extended practice period asking God to reveal his plan to us, and ask him very specifically, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? He will answer you in proportion to your willingness to hear his voice. And then in the shorter practice periods, tell yourself often today that God's plan for salvation and only his plan will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today, and respond to them with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only his plan will work. Try to remember the idea for today some 6 or 7 times an hour. There could be no better way to spend a half a minute or less than to remember the source of your salvation and to see it where it is. For salvation will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Say, and to whom? Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation. Grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work, will God's plan for salvation will work. Only God's plan for salvation will work. For salvation will Only God's plan for salvation will work.